Hey everybody, and welcome back to Uncle Pookie's Barbecue. I'm your host, Uncle Pookie, and this will be the last episode of Season 1 where I've been trying to focus on easier backyard everyday recipes. I was actually going to my local supermarket to find ribeye steaks. I was going to do a steak video, just a simple steak video. And what they had really wasn't all that great, and I stumbled across this roast. Looked at it, it looked kind of similar to a tenderloin, a middle section of tenderloin roast. And looked really good, and it was really cheap. It was like, $4 or $5 a pound. And thought, well, maybe we can do something with this. The name of it was a charbroil roast, which I've never heard of before. Looked it up, and Google, of course, knows everything. So couldn't find anything online about what part of beef this actually was. But either way, we went ahead. I brought it home, and we're going to experiment a little bit. So this is going to be a first time for myself doing this type of piece of meat, and maybe be for you yourself. I'm all about experimenting. And it looks really good. I'm going to do a reverse sear method. We're going to slow smoke this at a really low temp, around 200 degrees, so I can get as much smoke flavor in as I can. And then we're going to finish it off on a hot grill, not really to get sear marks, but to just finish it up, get it to where it's climbing rapidly. Get it to around that 120 mark, and then go ahead and pull it off, let it rest, and let the temperature follow up. I'm going to probe it in the middle of the roast, so I know the end pieces will be a little bit warmer than the center. But anyway, I appreciate y'all tuning in. If you will, subscribe, like the video, share it if you like it. Just trying to get more subscribers to the channel, obviously. And what that does is just put you on a list to be notified anytime we do post new videos. So I appreciate y'all tuning in. I hope everybody's having a good holiday season, and stay tuned. We'll get started here in just a minute. All right, let's take a look here. Again, this is along the lines of simple, but this is also a complete experiment for me. I have never cooked one of these, and honestly don't even know what this is exactly. Went to my local supermarket and was going through the meat rack. I was actually looking for steaks to do a steak video, and I saw this, and it looks a lot like a beef tenderloin, like a section of the tenderloin. You can see, if I get in here real close, it's got a lot of intramuscular fat, it looks like. So that's what I'm going to kind of take a look and see once we cut into this. But I wanted y'all to see true experiment here. This is a beef charbroil roast. Being a roast, normally roast meat is rather lean, but this does look like it's got a little bit of fat in it, and that's what kind of intrigued me here. So we're just going to pop into this and see what it looks like a little closer up here, and then we're going to build our marinade. So okay, well, it looks a lot like a beef tenderloin. It is a little lean, it looks like. It seems to be, there's not a lot of trimming to do on this. I'm probably going to leave this fat on this side, just trim off maybe some of this if it doesn't pull off. This little fat here, but there is a little bit of gristly type. Yeah, there is a little bit of gristle on that end. So I may cut into this just a little bit and see if I can tell how deep it goes. Don't really want that in there, but let's just get to cutting just a little bit here, clean it up just a little bit and see how far everything goes here. Now, if that's like a hard fat vein, then that's something we can work around on the finished product. But again, I'm just kind of wanting to cut off some of this. We're going to slow smoke this and then maybe finish it off over hot grill. So I'm not too concerned with a lot of fat on this. It's going to render off. But anything that looks like it might be gristle or silver skin, that I don't want. Because that's not going to go anywhere, and I really don't want that in my finished product. So let's just see where this leads. Again, this is a true experiment for me. I'm wanting to show y'all how, you know, you can make simple and easy to do grilling and smoking recipes here, but hey, if I learn something too, we're in good shape. So just wanting to, I don't want to waste too much of this meat. I mean, it's not expensive at all, but I mean, $10 for this little 2-pound roast. But I'm just kind of curious as to what that is. If it is some sort of gristle, or if it's, I'm going to shave just a hair off of this end and see if I can figure out what that is here. It is some, it's like a hard fat vein. It may be a little gristle in there, but it's not going to go very far. It doesn't look like. I mean, it looks like it may just barely go into the end of this. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time digging into it and tearing it up. I think we're just going to let it go. It may possibly render off. If it is just a hard fat, it may just get soft and go away. I say that, I'm going to try one more time. I get addicted to cutting on these sometimes just to see. Yeah, looks like just a light little gristle vein, but it's, like I said, it's not going to go very deep. So I'm going to leave it like it is and see how we do. Biggest thing I want to do is get this in the marinade. It's cold right now. I want this to sit in the marinade and absorb some of these flavors for as long as I can, 4 or 5 hours at least, before I put it on the smoker. And one other thing I'm going to do, just to see, is I'm going to puncture this roast carefully. I'm just going to put 3 knife cuts into one end of this. I want to see, instead of actually injecting, I want to see how this meat absorbs this marinade with just these knife punctures in it. And there's a lot of options. If this turns out like I think it's going to, when you have the finished product, you could treat it kind of like if you did a tenderloin or roast whole and slice it into 3 thick slices and make like a fillet type steak. You could leave it whole and then shave thin slices off of it, make it into sandwiches like a roast beef. There's a lot of different things you can do with this, but again, I'm just kind of experimenting, let y'all come along for the ride and see what turns out. I'll put this to the side here real quick. Clean off get the steak goo off my hands, and we're going to start on this marinade here. Now what I'm going to do is just mix up some Moore's marinade. I like this. It's got a little smoky flavor to it, but it's also, just reading here real quick, it's got some sodium, but it's not quite as strong as just straight Worcestershire or soy sauce, of course. But it's got some other flavors in it, and they do really, really well with beef. I am going to probably use that whole bottle, but I want to have some room to mix. We'll mix some red wine vinegar in this, give it some extra twang. The vinegar and beef go really well together, as long as you don't just overdo it. But now the best thing is we are going to tear up some minced garlic. I didn't have any fresh garlic. Didn't think about getting it from the store when I got that meat, so we are going to use some pre-minced garlic. Heaping spoonful. We all know beef and garlic go hand in hand, so we're going to cap that back up. just gonna kind of mix it around so that that garlic can kind of separate. Mix it around a little bit, and I'm gonna put my beef in the Ziploc bag. And go ahead and pour away. What we want this meat to be completely surrounded by the marinade. Get in there a little piece of garlic. What you do is get that Ziploc about 90% closed where you can push out the rest of this air so that it will be completely surrounded. And close it the rest of the way. It's almost like a vacuum seal. And you can see all of our chunks of garlic in that fluid. I'm not going to use the rest of that more as marinade. I said I would, but we got plenty of marinade. Like I said, I'm going to leave this in the refrigerator for at least 4 hours. And what I'll do is in about an hour, we'll just flip it back over, let the other side, because right now, of course, there's not a lot of meat marinade over the meat directly. But if we rotate it every hour, get a different portion of the meat completely submerged, we'll be in good shape. So we will go ahead, put this back in the fridge. I'll clean up my mess, and once we pull it out, get it ready for dry seasoning, we'll come right back. So stay tuned. Alright, so let's get to it here. We've got our roast in the bag. It has been marinating for a little over 4 hours, and every hour I just went in there and turned it in the bag so that all surfaces got to sit in the marinade for at least an hour. And we will just put this off to the side, and we are going to put multiple layers of flavor on this. Now, this literally just came out of the refrigerator, so it is going to sit a little bit before I put it on the smoker. But I'm going to start with my version of an all-purpose. This is the salt and pepper love. This is basically what we talked about before: salt, pepper, garlic, and onion. I'm going to put a pretty decent coat on there. I want this salt to kind of pull out some of this moisture that we've just imparted in there, so that we can continue to just pull flavor in as much as we can. And of course, this is a large piece of meat. It's not just, you know, a little thin minute steak or something. This is a little heavy duty steak here, or, you know, roast. Will be a steak. Could be multiple steaks here in a little bit. So we put a little bit of that on there. Second layer is this bottle is actually labeled, let me get it in there, Buttery Love. I have renamed it to my Garlic Butter Love, because that's really what it mainly is garlic, dehydrated butter, and then some other herbs and spices. It's really good on beef. Now, I am going to kind of put this on a little bit heavier because it does have some other flavors in it, and I want it to really get down in there, and I want to put almost like a bark or crust on this piece of meat, on this roast. So this is going to be a little bit heavier. Alright. Now we do have garlic still, minced garlic still on this, so it's really going to be a savory crust on here. A third seasoning. I can get the cap open. Sometimes these plastic caps stay pretty tight. This is my steak and burger love. This is, again, it's similar to the garlic butter. It does have a heavy amount of garlic in it, but it's also got some crushed red pepper, a little black pepper, and the biggest thing for this beef is it's got a Worcestershire powder in it. so it brings out a little bit more twang. We put some red wine vinegar in the marinade. The Moore's seasoning has a little bit of a vinegary twang to it, not as much as just a straight Worcestershire, but again, it's just those beefy notes. That's all I'm wanting to impart in this roast, is just some heavy beef flavors. And I'm putting all this on this rack here so that I was thinking at the time it was going to sit in the marinade in a pan, but I wanted to be able to drip free, because I do want the exterior moisture to kind of be able to drip away. I don't want to just have it sitting in its own juices while we're bringing it up to temperature. Last but not least is just a general Montreal steak seasoning. So these coarser, all my seasonings have finer grains to them. They're fine grain seasoning. And I do want to have a little bit of a crunchy crust to this. So on top of everything else, we're putting this Montreal on here to really just give it a little more zest, a little more, like I said, crunch in this crust that we're building here. Just to give it some more texture. I'll add to the flavors. There's some coarse peppers here, so that's again another great beefy consistency. And I'm not rubbing this in. All I'm doing is patting it on so that it'll stick a little bit. It's got plenty of binder with the marinade and its own moisture that's going to be coming out of this meat. So again, we've seasoned it heavy, but this roasts are typically a thicker piece of meat. It can stand all the flavor on the outside because of the straight beef on the inside. It's going to mix everything really well. So I'm going to let this just hang out, come to not really room temperature necessarily, but I want it to get warmer. I don't like putting something on the smoker or on the grill just straight out of the refrigerator cold. So we're going to let this sit for at least 30 minutes. I'm going to go out and get my pellet grill started up. What I'm going to do is put this on the grill. I'm going to put a couple of my TapQ probes, at least one probe in this meat, to kind of watch and see what the temperature is going to be like. I'm going to put this on the smoker. I imagine it's going to be at least an hour for it to hit about 115 to 120 degrees. And by then I'm going to have my grill blazing hot, and we're going to do this reverse sear. So we're going to let it smoke, let it just catch all the smoke I can get into it from the pellet grill, and then we're going to put this over hot coals and sear it off for about maybe 10 minutes to an internal temperature of 130 in the center. So that means these ends may be a little bit more done than that, but the center at 130, and we're going to bring it back inside, let it rest, loosely wrapped in foil, and it'll probably come up to about 135. So we're going to go ahead and let this rest. We're going to get the pellet grill started, and we'll be right back. All right, guys. One of the cool things about, now it is getting dark out here, I'm sorry about that, it's going to be a little tougher to see, but one of the cool things about this TapQ thermometer I've got here is, I just shut down, let's get it started back up here. One thing is it's got these extra long probes, which is going to work great for this roast. I'm going to be able to get this probe centered right in the center. Let's see here if I can get in the shot. It's going to be centered right in the middle of this roast, which is going to work out really good. And being the solo cameraman I am, bear with me just a minute, trying to do this one-handed. That's got us right about in the center of this roast here, with that much sticking out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it in the smoker. I've got the griller set here. It is right at 200 degrees. Kind of hard to read. Not going to let you read it, but anyway, we are set at 200 degrees. I'm going to open her up here. She is putting out a lot of smoke. That's the good thing. I want it to be smoking heavy, so that's why we're doing this lower temp right now. Set it right in the center. Hold the probe wire, close the lid up. I'll have it where it'll be sticking out of the lid there. And now when I go back to my probe, I'm going to be able to go to my phone and see the temperature that's set up on this thermometer. So that's going to be really cool. Be able to check it and set alarms if I want to do that. So anyway, we're going to leave this on. I'm estimating about an hour, but what I'm going to do is watch the temps. And when we get to 110, about 110 to 115, I'm going to pull it off, and I'm going to have my grill, my charcoal grill, blazing hot. I want to sear this thing off at the last 10 or 15 degrees. So we're going to go inside, set the phone app up, check it out, and stay tuned. We'll be right back. Alright, again, I don't know. There we go, a little bit of a view there, but I just came inside, turned on my phone app, made a connection, and you can see probe number 1 is at 48 degrees. So that roast is at 48 degrees right now. We're going to keep our eye on this. I've got the alarm set for 115, so if it gets away from me, my phone is going to go off once that internal temperature is at 115. So stay tuned. We'll check it out in just a few minutes. Alright, again, it is dark out, so it is going to be tough to see, and I'm going to pull the meat off of the smoker and get ready to put it on the grill. So just kind of bear with me here. Alright, so pulling a little bit early. It is showing, we can't really see it here, but 103 internal, because this grill over here is smoking hot. Throw a little, like I said, smoking hot. I'm not going to throw it directly over those hot coals either. I'm going to put it just off to the side, right there, until we finish off here. I'm going to watch the internals. Not going to rotate it. I'm not worried about sear marks, but we're going to leave it over there. Watch the internals. We hit 125 to 130. Then I'm going to jump back on it, take it off, let it rest, and we will be good to go. Alright, we pulled it just a little bit earlier than I wanted to. Since that probe is dead center of this large piece of meat, it was reading 121. So I just took it off. I'm going to get it covered up, and we're going to take it inside and let it rest, and we will check back in just a second and see how everything turns out. Alright everybody, here we are. I'm going to put this charbroil, reverse sear charbroil roast on the cutting rack here. It has been sitting on the rack, cooling, wrapped, loosely wrapped in foil for about 10 minutes. That's about as long as I can stand. So still a little warm, and looks pretty good. It's a good medium rare on the ends to medium, so we're going to go with that. I'm going to take one of these inside pieces here Definitely got a nice bark on it from the outside. You can see all the seasoning that's kind of charred on there. Wow, that was very good. It's definitely not as tender as a fillet, so it's, you know, roast normally is a very lean cut of meat. That's why they slow cook it. But it's really not tough at all. So we did leave it to kind of recap what we've done here. See, you know, marinated it for a little over 4 hours in the Moore's marinade with the red wine vinegar and the minced garlic. Had that in there for over 4 hours. Took it out, seasoned it really heavy. Like you can see that Montreal, some of these bigger, coarser grains of seasoning was the last thing I did put on. But we put the salt and pepper love, my all-purpose seasoning, the garlic butter love to add some more beefy notes with that garlic. The steak and burger love to do the same, just reinforce. It has a few different seasonings in it, some thyme, and then that Worcestershire powder, and then topped it off with a heavy coat of the Montreal for these coarser grains to give us that bark and that crust on there. It was actually on the pellet grill, the smoker, at 200 degrees for an hour and 35 minutes. Reached a temp of 103, I believe it was. Went ahead and put it on the grill. And as you can see, the outside's good. So when we carve from the other side, this middle is going to be very medium rare, which is exactly what I like. Grilled it for about 20 minutes total, maybe 15 minutes, to get an internal temperature of 121. Pulled it, let it rest for 10 minutes. I haven't temped it again because I know 125 to 130 is where I wanted the center of this to end up. And that's where we are right now. So, again, it wasn't, you know, it's not super tender. It's not like a prime rib or a piece of tenderloin. But it's not as tough or as tight as a sirloin either. So, you know, $10 for a 2-pound roast, reverse seared it like that. Hey, it's a great little backdoor, quick fix kind of a deal for steaks. Again, you can cube this up. You could slice it thinner than I just did. I went about a 1/4 inch thickness on the slices because we're going to eat it more like steak. But you've got a lot of options with this. So never know. Go to your local grocery, go to the meat department, and just check out something like this. My biggest thing is I look for that internal fat. I don't want to see a lot of silver skin or a lot of gristle going through. But the internal fat is what's going to keep this moist. And I can see it's still got some juice even though I've just cut this. So it's definitely not dried out at all. Between the marinade and the internal fat has kept everything real moist and juicy. So try that out and give it a try and experiment a little bit. That's kind of what barbecue and grilling is all about. Appreciate you tuning in. Please like and subscribe and share the videos here on YouTube. If you have any questions, you can comment here below, or you can hit me up on Facebook, on Instagram, or Twitter. And thank you again for tuning in. Y'all have a good evening.